I'd never heard anything like that before.
Right.
What riff sounds like that?
Nothing.
I was just blown away, and I remember saying to Jerry, I was like, dude, I'm in. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe something I recorded is actually on the radio. Making that record changed everything for me. There's 5 or 6 different vocal scenes in every song. Once I start to create one of those, it will kind of lead me to the next one. These vocal escapes are part of the song now. And as a Rush fan, I know what kind of record I wanted to Rush make.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty good idea of what the other Rush fans wanted too. I just still love music so much. And I just want to keep recording good songs and hanging out with cool dudes, man. That's what we've been doing since the basement.
What's up, Nick?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Glad to be down here hanging.
So I've had some people in here whose records that you've produced.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your journey into being a producer through, I guess, starting as an assistant, working at Sound City, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the journey started actually in Knoxville still, when I was playing in bands and trying to figure out, you know, what I was going to do. And I knew I wanted to do something in music. So playing in bands. And the whole recording thing started was I took the money I got to go to college with and I bought a 4-track instead.
What kind?
A Tascam 388.
Okay.
It was 6 channels, 4 tracks, but you had those 2 extra channels so you could hook 2 extra mics into them.
I remember
and
those.
Fold them down onto a couple of the other tracks.
Yeah.
So I started recording our own band so we could listen back to what we sounded like. Because when you're playing it, you're not listening to it, you're playing it. So it started out of being able to see what we sounded like. So I started, you know, recording our practices, and we'd go listen to them and be like, oh, wow, that's cool, but maybe the guitar solo's too long, or we need to put why are we only doing the coolest part of the song once? Let's do it twice, you know? So we kind of started to build like that, and then I started recording my friends' bands. Like, oh, you know, Nick made a cool demo of his band. Hey, will you record us? So I had this old station wagon, and I would put all the stuff in the back of the station wagon, and I would drive to rehearsal rooms and I would record my friends' bands. So I started recording bands, and then I started getting into like the local studios. There was an ADAT studio, and there was one studio that actually had a 2-inch machine, and there was another one that had a 16-track reel-to-reel. So I would start going into those places with my friends' bands and our band and start to be like, okay, you know, let's get it in tune, you guys. You know, tune the bass. You know, drums, great, but you got a giant drum set and you put a new head on the smallest tom. Like, let's change the head on the snare. Right. You know, stuff like that. So started doing all of that for years and years, and just kind of got to the point of just knowing there was another step or level or something out there. So when I moved to California, I moved to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And
when would that have been?
This was around the end of 1995.
Okay.
Actually, right at the beginning of '96, I think I moved out there with my friends, like January 2nd or 3rd. We moved out there as a band. Like, I moved out there with the band I was in at the time because, you know, we were going to give it a shot.
Right.
We're going to LA. We're going to do it for real. You know, let's get out of the pond of Knoxville and let's go swim in the ocean. And we did. We went out there and we got out there and got an apartment, and it was great. And it was 4 dudes sharing an apartment. We got a practice room. We started playing at all the clubs and doing the whole thing. It's like, yeah, we're out here, we're doing it. Right around the time that happened, I got a call from a friend of mine who was working at Sound City Studios. He told me that they needed a runner.
Okay. Explain what a runner is.
So a runner is basically the studio errand person who
gets coffee, stuff like that.
Yeah, you make coffee,
whatever.
You keep the fridge stocked, you clean the bathroom, you make sure there's paper towels. You know, if an artist comes up and is like, hey, we want some food, we want this, whatever, you get in your car and you go get it.
And then you go get it, stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah. So a friend of mine who was making a record there called me, told me they needed a runner. I borrowed a friend's car, drove down there, got hired on the spot. I'm driving back to Hollywood to my apartment like, oh my God, I don't have a car. How am I going to be a runner? So I borrowed our band van at the time, and I was a runner in a giant Ford, 1-ton, 15-passenger van, you know, going getting Starbucks and picking up groceries and doing stuff for bands and the barbecue stuff and all that. And then that working the front desk, answering the phone, basically be in the studio.
Now, what kind of bands were coming in then?
So at that point in the 90s, Sound City had kind of gotten a big reputation for doing the Nirvana album and the Tom Petty stuff. Everybody wanted to be in that drum room. I mean, it was pretty much all rock.
Yeah.
It was all rock, maybe some metal here and there, but it was all rock. It was great. I loved it. And then, you kind of work the front desk for a while, and then you start to get into the studios and learn how to roll up mic cables. And, the assistant that's in there he needs another pair of hands to help him do all the other stuff. So you kind of get pulled from the front desk into the studios, and you're hanging out with the bands and the producers and the engineers, and you're in the room. And the way Sound City worked was, you went from a runner to an assistant, and then when the assistant leaves, you go up the ladder. So whoever the next runner was gets to fill in the next assistant position, which was really cool.
Yeah.
It was great. And I was just immediately wow, this is like the real version, the big version of kind of what I had started doing in Knoxville. I had never seen I didn't know what a Neve was. I'd never seen I'd never seen an 1176 before or all that stuff. So it was really cool and eye-opening. And at the same time, the band was we were trying to figure out who we were. Mid-90s was a really hard time to be in a heavy kind of like metal band and stuff like that, because the scene really changed in the 90s.
That's right.
And I just, I started to see what was happening with these other these records where these producers were producing, and I was like, oh man, this is how you do it. And I was just like, I don't think it's going to happen for us. I just don't. I don't think we've...
Interesting. Wow. From seeing it on the inside and seeing how these records are made, you're thinking like, was it kind of like
we didn't want to play the game like I was starting to see you had to play it.
Right.
Back then.
Yeah.
And it was very different and it was very difficult. And I just kind of came to the decision that I think that I want to get more into this producing thing because I would have a little more control over my destiny and my career, not have to be so dependent on other people and some companies and all this stuff. So I really kind of I started to pull away from the band, and I just really kind of went headfirst into engineering. I wouldn't even consider it producing yet.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a producer was, but then I realized when I started to assist and see all these producers come in, I'm like, oh, I do that.
Okay, so what does an assistant do there at Sound City? So what would you be doing? You'd assist the...
Everything.
Okay.
So you basically, the engineer, you prep the session. You show up hours before the session starts and you start aligning the tape machine.
Yep.
You start plugging stuff in. You start labeling everything. You start patching everything so that when the client got there, you could be recording in 10 minutes. That never really ever happened, but
theoretically.
Yeah. So the assistant job is basically to have the engineers back and be able to look forward a little bit and listen, pay attention and listen to what the engineer and the producer and the band are talking about. They're talking about an overdub. Okay, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to get some mics up. I'm going to get some headphones up. So by the time they're done with that conversation, you're coming back in the room going, yeah, it's set up already. The assistant used to run the headphone mixes.
Right.
Patch all the gear. Kind of the main job, though, was dealing with the tape machine.
Yeah.
The tape machine was, the battle. Man versus machine was that tape machine.
Yeah.
The tape, the different formulations, the different speeds, the different alignments, the different biasing.
And how often would you align the machine? You clean the machine multiple times a day or one time a day at least?
Few times a day. It depends on how much tape action was happening.
Yeah.
If you were changing lots of reels and tracking and lots of reels on and off and tons of fast winding, you need to clean them a lot.
Yeah.
And you see the shedding build up on the end of a Q-tip.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, that's particles of music on a Q-tip.
Okay,
now.
and how much digital recording was going on? Was anyone using any early versions of Pro Tools to do any vocal things at the time?
There were. I remember seeing a very
like a 4-track version of Pro Tools or whatever.
A very early version that was just a 2-track stereo version.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it was called Sound Designer?
Sound
back then?
Designer,
It was
yes,
before
that's
it was
right.
actually called Pro Tools.
Yeah.
I remember all of us just kind of staring at this, computer, just like
All right. Little did you know
kind of touching it.
that that you're going to be staring at one for.
Yeah, and it was pretty interesting to watch work. But I remember at the time, we were all just kind of whatever. It's stupid. Nobody's going to do that. It's more fun to try to fly vocals around from a quarter-inch machine, and
We're going to get to that.
it was more fun to do it that way back then. But then once the whole tuning and we figured out how to, kind of tweak drums and edit drums and stuff like we did on tape. I mean, there was a really long period of time where everybody had to experiment to figure out how to make
Okay, so
the
let's
computer do stuff.
Before we go any further, I want to quickly interject that 57% of you watching right now are not subscribed to my channel. So please hit the subscribe button now. Thanks. Let's talk about a few things that people take for granted. Let's talk about drum editing first. I want to talk about vocal tuning, how it was done. So let's talk about drum editing.
So the drum editing was, and I learned this. I had never cut a piece of tape with a razor blade before in my life. So I watched, Joe Barresi and Garth Richardson and Sylvia Massey were a few of the engineers that were, heavily working at Sound City a lot, along with, Matt Hyde. And all four of these people they could edit tape amazingly with razor blades. So, you just kind of stand there and watch and get an understanding what's going on.
Would they explain what they're doing?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because this is highly technical. This is like, you can ruin a song.
Yes.
Like this, that, So, we would get a piece of masking tape. There's the deck of the tape machine.
Yep.
And you get a piece of masking console tape and tape it across the deck. And then you take the tape. You before you take the tape off, you go through it with the grease pencil and you mark all the clicks. Scrub the wheel.
Yep.
Oh, there's a click. Grease pencil.
And
Go
the
to the
click
next
would
one.
be what? A bass drum, a snare drum, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever
a tick of. We used to use drum machines.
Okay.
An Alesis drum machine, I remember, was at Sound City, and that was like the click standard for every record.
Yeah.
And people would do tempo. We'd move the tempo knob up and down while bands were playing to do tempo rides. It's like, okay, here comes the chorus. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. We're up to 220. 120. All right, we're going back to the verse.
That's your tempo map that you're
exactly.
doing on the fly.
You would actually ride a tempo as it's going printed to tape.
Yeah.
So you would take the piece of tape off and you would look at where all your white marks were, and then you would, with a Sharpie, put those lines on a piece of masking tape. There's your grid.
Amazing.
Right?
Yep.
So then you go through and you mark all the kicks and snares and toms with different colors of grease pencil. And you look at all of them relative to your grid that you've just made, and you have to make a copy of the performance onto another tape machine, because if anything that is late, you can just cut the space out,
and move it together,
stitch it together, and retape it. But anything that was ahead, in order to move it back, you had to go to the other tape machine, find the exact same hit, and take the air before the hit, cut that little sliver out, take it over to your master, put it in so you could move stuff back. So you're basically
doing exactly what you would do in digital, like in Pro Tools or whatever you're using, Logic.
Yeah.
You would do the exact same thing, but you're actually doing it manually.
Doing it manually with razor blades and tape.
How long would it take to do a drum take doing that?
Depending on how complex the drum part was, it could take half a day to a whole day to maybe 2 days. If it's something, really technical, lots of double bass, that would take hours and hours and hours. And then the tricky part too was not to lose perspective.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to rewind it and then listen. And if it was like, oh, I didn't move that back far enough, then you've got to go back over. You have to undo what you did, go back over to the copy, grab another little splice. We're talking slivers of tape that are, as wide as the side of a penny, like little teeny slivers of tape. And you get that back in there and get it tucked and get the hope that it would lay and stick there. Then when you finally get your edited drum track, it's just like as it's fast winding across the heads.
Yeah.
Then you usually dump that into, make a fresh copy of it. And that's your drum take. That's your master drum take. And then you end up having, 20 reels of tape that are cut up and unusable.
Yeah.
And they're basically garbage after that. I remember throwing miles of tape away, just unloading right into a garbage can. Because remember the Studer machine where you could take the pull reel off?
Oh yeah.
And it would just go, and you could guide the tape into the garbage can and just hit fast forward, and the whole thing would just unspool right into the garbage.
Insane to think about.
It's insane to think about.
Yeah. Okay, so you get your drum tracks done. So that's basically the process of doing drums of what you would need to do.
And if you want to do hardcore edits, that would be that. But otherwise, it might be big sections. We're going to use the verse from take 2, and we're going to use the chorus from take 3, and that's the part, so we need to make a copy of that on another tape machine, and then you'd make that copy, which would be second generation, and you take that second generation copy and fly it into the first generation master. I mean, nobody ever notices that stuff.
That's right.
But that used to happen all the time. Then you get your drums, and then go back and start doing the guitar and bass to that.
Talk about vocals, about how people used to fix vocals. You get a comp as good as it can be, and if you needed to tune something.
So tuning stuff back then, there were a couple different ways that I observed.
Yep.
And again, I wasn't so much doing the tuning yet because I wasn't quite there yet.
Yep.
Like drum editing, getting good at that was enough, and being a good assistant and being able to, the producer says, hey, I want you to do this drum edit. I'll be back in 3 hours. Having the confidence to be able to do that.
That's big.
And have the producer and the band show up and you hit play and everybody's stoked on your drum edit. That was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then when it came into the vocal world, again, 2 tape machines. You've comped your vocal, you've dedicated either a slave reel, so you have, 10 or 12 tracks to record your vocals on, or you have 3 tracks left on your main reel. So, take those 3 tracks, comp them down to 1, then you got your vocal comp, make a copy of that onto another tape machine, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. It doesn't have to be a multi-track. And you vary speed that tape machine, either slower or faster to compensate if it's sharp or flat. And you would vary speed it and then fly that vocal back onto the master tape machine, and or if it was certain words or phrases, you just punch those in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had to make a copy of your comp, because if you didn't nail your punch, then you just recorded over your vocals. And by the way, you just erased the 3 tracks that had your takes on them too.
Right.
Because you need more tracks.
So it's so easy to do this that I don't think people realize how quickly it changed. Because from '96 to 2000, by 2000, everyone's in Pro Tools, and you have as many takes, as many tracks as you need, and everything is digital.
And remember when Antares released the first version of Auto-Tune?
Yeah.
It wasn't in a computer.
Right.
It was a piece of hardware
rack
that
mount.
went in a rack. What was it, like the ATR-1?
Yeah.
So
like
again,
98 or so, like that.
Yeah,
something like that.
You would take your vocals, tape out track 22, and you would run them through that Antares box, and you would manually tune it.
Yep.
And I think it had an auto mode too. And then you would go through that box to another track and reprint it through the hardware box. I also remember tuning vocals with Eventides.
Oh, yeah.
Get the version of the Eventide that had the studio sampler in it. You could move that all over the place.
And you just decide how many cents sharp or flat it had to be, and then you would punch that. You'd move it up. Oh, no, not quite high enough. Let's move it up 3 more cents.
Exactly.
Okay, and then you punch that one word in or whatever.
Exactly.
And you fix it.
It was fun. It was a lot of experimentation, and it was a lot of mistakes.
What about drum sampling back then?
Before
Sound
Pro Tools?
Replacer before Pro Tools,
Man, it was archaic, man. There were these old samplers. Remember Diane?
Oh, yeah.
There was a sampler called
Yes,
Diane.
yes.
I used to see that all over the place.
Yeah.
And I would mix at Scream, and they had a Diane in there, and I was just fascinated by that thing. And, it was so weird, too, because you would listen to it by itself, and you're like, that sounds terrible. And then you would listen to it with the drums and solo, and you're like, that still sounds terrible. Then you put everything else up. It's like, that sounds great now. How is that? It's completely out of sync. It's, your kick drum's here. Diane is probably like right here.
Right.
In Pro Tools now you look, you would never I mean,
right, exactly.
You know, even again, the Eventide Studio sampler, we would use that because that would chase time code.
Yep.
I got to be honest, though, I don't remember there being a lot of sampling happening because the Sound City drum room.
Right.
I mean, you'd get a great drum set in there, and with the console that was in there, and that just random space of a room. I mean, that room was not built as a drum room; it was built as a Vox assembly room. They used to, when Vox came to the U.S., Sound City was where they assembled their amps.
Interesting.
That's what it was.
Amazing.
All the overdub rooms were offices. It couldn't have been more random, that place. The only like really built room was the control room.
When you would actually be sitting there and engineering a thing, how does that happen? How do you move up to becoming becoming an engineer?
You know, the great thing about Sound City was the owners. Tom Skeeter was the owner. Great guy, sweetheart of a man. Great guy, loved music. The studio manager, this woman named Siobhan O'Brien, awesome lady. She was great. She really, loved all the guys that worked there. So it would be literally like, hey, Siobhan, nobody's coming in the studio this weekend. Can I bring a band in? And then the answer was always yes.
It's awesome.
But, lock the door, clean up. I don't want to know you were down here.
Right.
Like,
and
what
you
was the
grab
deal?
some unused some tape, or would you buy a reel of tape for yourself?
We would buy a reel of tape. We would all go in.
That you keep yourself.
Yeah,
right?
we would just keep it there, stashed in the locker. So whenever we had a chance to record, we would just go back to that reel. We recorded everything at 15 IPS.
Yep.
So we could get as much tape as possible.
Yeah.
And, she would let us go in and record bands. All of us, myself, Greg Fiddleman, Billy Bowers, we were kind of the three assistants at the time. Greg Fiddleman went on, he produces Metallica now.
That's right, yes.
Joe Barisi, he was an assistant at Sound City.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Joe Barisi.
Yeah.
I remember meeting him when he walked into Sound City when I was a runner. I was like, oh my God, that's Joe Barisi. He's my favorite engineer ever. And then I got to assist for him and we became friends and I engineered for him. I mean, it was such a cool, it was almost like a frat house.
So when you're setting up for a session, let's say you're setting up for a drum session, everybody does things a little different. Mm-hmm. Would you get to know how people wanted things set up and I'll bring out these particular mics, set them up that way?
I mean, there was definitely a standard mic and the kick, mic and the snare, 421s on the toms. People would use different overheads sometimes. For example, Jim Scott might want to use U87s versus Dave Schiffman might want to use 414s with the C12 brass capsules. Yep. So I started to notice there were kind of some standard things, but then there were certain things people would switch up, usually overheads and room mics.
Yeah.
All the close miking drum
were pretty standard.
It was pretty much standard. I mean, 57 on the top of the snare, and D112 in the kick drum. I mean, that's kind of the normal. But it was room mics and overheads that were kind of where you would get funky.
And what people would use large diaphragm condensers versus small diaphragm condensers? Would you see a lot of small diaphragm condensers in that room?
Yeah, there were because Sound City had a great mic collection.
Yeah.
It was all from the 70s, tons of Neumanns. I mean, there was one or two of every Neumann represented in the locker. I would see the small stuff on the hi-hats and the ride cymbal, maybe acoustic guitar, stuff like that. But the large diaphragms were the M49 were the room mics, 87s, 67s, 47 FET. And that's one thing I really noticed the most was how creative people would get with their room mics.
Would the drums always be set up in relatively the same spot?
Kind of. They were kind of in that back,
yeah,
maybe 3/4 of the way through the room. And some people would use the riser, some people wouldn't. I never really heard personally a huge difference in between the two.
Yeah.
It was just way more of a pain in the ass to do the riser. I just remember because it was really heavy. They always said, please don't use the riser. Please don't use the riser.
So the room mics, how would those vary as far as how they set them up?
Well, some guys would, like Jim Scott, for example, he had this thing where he would do SM57s, the talkback mics, and all those talkback mics would go into a mult, and then that mult would go to a mic pre to tape. So when the drums are playing, nobody's talking into them, so those mics are just wide open in the room, and they're just pointed randomly everywhere.
Yeah.
You get the best room sound. It was amazing. Sometimes, the M49 would be pointed at the floor. Sometimes we take a Sony C500 and point it so the capsule was pointing at the ceiling, and then put it on a stand and get it as close to the ceiling as possible. I started to learn that there were all these little cool nooks and crannies.
Each person had their own thing.
Yeah, everybody kind of had their own thing, and then you kind of take that and make that your own thing, just like everybody does. Everybody learns and is influenced by kind of what everybody else is doing. You just kind of take and make your own version of that.
I remember Jim Scott, I did a session with him, and he goes, you know what I like to do? I like to mic the bottom of the ride cymbal, and flip the phase of it, and he says it isolates it from the overheads even more, and he said it's a good thing, like mic it under the bell and stuff.
Yeah.
So you pick up little things like that.
Little things. I mean, nobody really ever did anything the same way.
Yeah.
Everybody did stuff a little bit different, and then as you're starting to get better at what you do and starting to get a little more independent and, get out and start looking for bands to record and stuff, you kind of, oh, wow, I want to try this room thing. I remember seeing somebody do this a couple years ago. I'm going to try something, but I'm going to put a rat pedal on it, or I'm going to run the snare through an amp,
right,
or something like that, and then put the amp in an ISO and mic that and fold that back up under the snare or into a room mic or something. It was a lot of creative searching to make things sound different.
Okay, so how do you go from there to getting your first production, like major label production gig?
So through Sound City, working there for, I don't know, 4 to 5 solid years, I met a lot of people. Mm-hmm. As I started to kind of get out of Sound City a little bit, kind of start to spread my wings, I started to record more local bands around LA and the LA scene, and I had met certain A&R guys and music people through Sound City.
Yeah.
So I would start kind of recording some local bands in the LA scene, kind of like Knoxville years earlier, but this was in LA now.
Right.
In the game.
Yeah.
So as I'm coming through, the LA scene, kind of starting to, become friends with more bands, and, A&R guys and labels are starting to, kind of know who I am and stuff. And I'm starting to build up a lot more confidence in myself, because I'm like, wow, this is great. I had recorded the Foo Fighters at Sound City. I was an assistant on a session they had done. I was an assistant a couple times because Dave really loved Sound City because he recorded there with Nirvana.
Yeah.
So he would come back if he ever needed to do a song or he was in town. He'd come, and we just kind of became friends. Very similar backgrounds. He grew up in Virginia. Yep. I grew up in Tennessee. We had a lot of the same common interests. So we kind of, little budding friendship started along with the recording thing, and then I wouldn't see him again for a while, and then he'd come in and record, and we'd have a blast, and then totally randomly, I ran into him one day, and he was looking to make a record at his house in Virginia in the basement. He had built a basement studio. And coincidentally, I had just finished assistant engineering a record in a house. And I was just like, I'm down. And he was like, I can't find anybody that wants to come to Virginia to make a record in my basement, because he was talking to all the big producer guys and none of them wanted to do it.
Right.
But I was like,
because it wasn't a thing back then to make. I mean, people made records in houses, but they didn't necessarily make them in Virginia. Yeah,
there was a stigma. Oh, really? You're recording at your house? That's right. That can't be any good.
Right.
So, he was willing to take a chance, and then I'm in Virginia and we're making One by One. And making that record changed everything for me. It came out, and the song On My Life was a big hit and went to the radio, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe something I recorded is actually on the radio. And that was, like, all these years, that's all I had wanted, because I just always, that was the goal. Whether it was my band or now recording bands, like, I just felt like actually getting a song on the radio was the goal.
Since we're talking about it, I want to play it.
All my life I've been searching for something. Something never comes, never leads to nothing. Nothing satisfies, but I'm getting closer to the prize at the end of the rope. All night long I dream of the day when it comes around and it's taken away. Leaves me with the feeling that I feel the most. Feel it come come to life when I see your ghost.
So killer.
Calm down, don't you resist. You're such a delicate wrist. And if I give it a twist, something to hold when
I just
I lose
overdone.
my grip. Will I find something in there to give me just what
Back
I
guitar.
need? Another reason to bleed. One by one, hitting up my sleeve. One by one, hitting up my sleeve.
Okay, so Nick, what was the room like that you recorded in? What's the size
So
of it?
it was, maybe a 10-foot ceiling,
Yeah.
and there was a big pole in the middle of the room, and there
Okay.
was nothing on the walls, and we put a rug under the drums. It couldn't have been more random.
Okay.
I mean, it was about as random as you get.
We know that Dave's an amazing drummer, incredibly good drummer, one of the best ever. Dave is such a tight guitar player. Talk about Dave's guitar playing for a second.
I had no idea how good of a guitar
Yeah.
player he was. When we started recording, like when we started making this record, I was just blown away at how good of a guitar player
Yeah.
he was. And he's tight, just really tight.
Super tight,
Super
clean,
tight. Yeah.
all the articulations, everything. I
Yeah.
mean, he really is
Yeah, I mean,
excellent. Nobody talks about his guitar playing.
No, that's a perfect example of his
Yeah.
guitar playing. I mean, that's all him. I mean, most of the guitar is him on the records.
Yeah.
And then Chris Shiflett comes in and kind of adds his bits and solos and stuff. But all the core foundation of that stuff is Dave.
What about Dave's vocal on there? Were you recording vocals in the same way that you do them now?
Very much so. The vocals for this song were recorded really late at night.
Okay.
With Dave sitting on the couch.
Yep.
In front of a 251 going into a Martech MS-10.
Explain what a 251 is for people.
So a Telefunken, one of those big old green mics.
Yeah.
It's like the greatest sounding mic of all time. It's kind of the microphone that everybody's been chasing ever since.
Right.
It's just big. It's just a big capsule. It just makes, I've never heard a mic that sounds like
And
that
how close
before.
is Dave to the mic?
Pretty close,
Right up-
pretty much
right
on
up
it.
on it, yeah.
Yeah, and he's sitting on the couch, and the mic is right here, and we did those vocals really quick.
Yep.
And we would always do the vocals really late at night.
Does Dave like to wear headphones, or is he singing with speakers?
Yeah, those were headphones.
Headphone-
We were both
okay.
headphones. I always we did the vocals in the control room. I
Okay.
really like to do the vocals in the control room because I like to be able to hit stop and talk to the artist.
And why do the vocals late at night? Why do you like doing that?
Because we were on that whole working all night.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of the songs on that record, if you isolate the vocals, you can hear birds chirping in the background because there was a window in a bush right next to where we were doing the vocals. And I remember we'd be sitting there with the headphones on and be like, oh shit, the sun's about to come
Okay,
up.
so what were you recording on at that point?
That record was done to tape.
Okay.
That was an Studer 827. And we would track, Dave and Taylor would play the song together, track
Yeah.
it together with no click
Yeah.
until we got the basic track, till we got the drums and the Dave's guitar track. Then I would edit, sometimes comp the drum takes, and then we redo the guitar, and that was it. And the energy, like it just then hearing it just takes me back to just the three of us just down there just doing it, and it was pretty amazing.
Okay, so I want to do a little side thing here about talking about recording drums on tape versus recording drums in Pro Tools. Now, I've talked about this with a lot of producers and engineers, but you kind of started right at the end of people using tape or near the end of it, so that you really went over the transition into digital. Talk about the early versions of recording digitally.
Well, early versions were tough still because the sample rates were low.
Yeah.
It was still, I think it was stuck at 44 and 48.
44 and 48, yeah.
Yeah, which was what a lot of the early digital tape machines, 3348s,
Yes,
the
the
big
Sony.
Sony machine.
Yep.
That was 48K.
Yeah.
That machine. That was $1 million tape machine.
Yes.
You could buy those for like $500 now.
I know, right?
You can.
It's amazing, yeah.
8-bit technology.
Yes.
Who wants 8
unbelievable.
bits, 44? I mean, nobody.
Nobody.
So it took a while kind of for the whole digital thing to really, really sound good.
Well, why do you? What do you like about the sound of tape? First of all, when you hear
there's just
things?
there's a compression, there's a distortion that happens, there's a harmonic thing that happens with drums that go to tape that doesn't happen with a computer because a computer doesn't color anything.
Right.
A computer is recording exactly what it is. It's not adding anything or taking anything away. It just is.
Yeah.
Whereas a tape machine, depending on what kind of tape you used, what speed you were running at, how much you overbias, like the things I said before, how you would, for every track, there's 3 adjustments, high, mid, and low. So you could really affect the way drums sounded on the tape, whereas in the digital world, that doesn't really happen. So the transition was kind of, how do we make the drums kind of not so much sound the same, because they're not going to sound the same, but how do we make them feel the same?
Yeah.
How do we get the same bottom out of the kick drum? How do we get the same crack with that tape compression out of the snare and out of the overheads?
Okay, and how did you do that? What were some of the things that you
Adding
did?
more stuff on the front end
Yeah.
before it went into Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Maybe compressing things even a little bit harder. Doing weird EQs, sending the snare mic into an amp and then miking the speaker to kind of simulate some tape distortion.
Yeah.
Like if you hit the tape too hard,
Yeah.
you can kind of simulate that. So there was a kind of a transitional period of figuring out, okay, we're not on...
This is before all the plugins that they had that started getting... It took a long time, really, for
There were no
plugins.
plugins.
There were no plugins at first, yeah.
This is, how you can Apple Z like unlimited?
Yeah.
You could Apple Z once then.
Yeah.
You go
When you say
backwards
Apple Z,
once.
you go back one time,
Yeah,
one revision.
You could
Or
undo once.
Undo once, yes.
So if you made a mistake, you had
Yeah.
one opportunity to
Yeah.
get rid of that.
That was like one step beyond tape. It was like tape without the sound.
Exactly. I mean, it was the dinosaur age of
Yes.
digital recording. It was black and white. You're
Yeah,
staring
but
at
then
this.
they started. But you started getting for Pro Tools. There started a couple channels. You had McDSP plugins, the first aftermarket
Bomb
ones.
Factory.
Bomb Factory, the Metric Halo channel strip, and then you'd have some companies would start making some things.
The Cosmonaut.
Right, but the tracking, trying to find things on the front end before you go into the computer,
Yeah.
then you're
Yeah.
looking for those things that tape did
Yeah.
to try and
To emulate that.
yeah.
Or record to tape and bounce it into Pro Tools.
Right.
Which used to happen a lot.
Yes.
We used to track specifically drums and guitars to tape and then bounce those into Pro Tools and then do the bass and everything else in Pro Tools from that point on. I mean, we tried every combination of everything to figure out, and then all of a sudden once 96K came out, I was sold because I started making all my records at 96K from literally the minute you could.
When did that happen?
That was in about 2003 or 4, I
Yeah.
think. It was right before the 192s came out. Remember when Avid put out the 192s and they went up to 96 or 192?
Yeah.
I started using 96 because there's more top and more bottom. It's twice the sample rate. So it makes sense. And you can hear it. If you really pay attention and listen, you can hear it. You get more width and you get more depth on everything. It's math. It's twice the math. It makes sense. So, and that was a whole challenge because computers were really slow back then too. So we, myself and other engineers and assistant engineers, we would all kind of, huddle in the control room after sessions were over and kind of talk about the things that we had discovered or figured out. And everybody would share those things around the community.
Yeah.
And that's how we all kind of learned how to incorporate a computer into the analog record making world and replace a tape machine. It took a long time. And then, and again, if you're going to record at 96K on a Mac G3, how are you going to do that? How are you going to play 20 tracks of drums at 96K? Well, you couldn't.
You're not.
But we figured out if you split the record on 2 drives, you could actually do it. So we would allocate all the drum tracking to 1 drive.
That's back when you were using the SCSI drives and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That were 10,000 RPMs. And
Yeah,
stuff.
for 3.6 gigs of space. You know, you can't even fit a whole song on that.
I know,
now.
it's ridiculous.
But even, okay, so after the Scuzzies, which were great because they were fast.
They were fast.
They were really small.
Yes.
And they were really expensive.
Right.
And then when it kind of graduated to the Firewire drives, it was like, okay, how are we going to pull these off because these drives aren't as fast.
Yeah.
And the buses, the bus speed was the problem.
That's right. That was a Firewire 400.
400. So if
Yeah.
you're using a Firewire 400 drive, recording at 96K across a lot of drums, it won't play it back.
Yeah.
So we figured out a system, track and allocate all the drums to one drive, and then allocate everything else to another drive, and you could feed both of those drives into 400 buses, and you could play everything always. So we did that for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
Until the solid state drives are out now.
Yeah.
And now you can put a terabyte on a drive and put it in your pocket.
Right. Yeah. When this Foo Fighters record came out, here, talk to me about how that changed things for you.
So it changed everything. I went from wondering what I was going to do to not having enough time to do all the stuff that I wanted to do. It really got me up to the next level to where, you know, labels and managers would really take me seriously because I had a hit. And, you know, if you have a hit on the radio, everybody wants to know who did it.
Frank McDonough's your manager. Was Frank your manager back then even? This was a thing that people had producer managers back in the early 80s. Producer managers started happening. And engineers would have producer managers too. But just to get one, it's just kind of like getting a record deal or something, to get somebody that's one and that'll pay attention to you and help you field offers or find you gigs or whatever.
Yep.
You have this record, this big record, and then all of a sudden people start calling you.
The phone starts ringing pretty consistently, which was great because I just started working on records for major labels and bands that had good songs. And I mean, it just felt normal. I didn't really think much about it. I just kind of did it.
Did people ask you, where did you do this record?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I told them we did it in a house, people were just like, whoa, you know. I mean, you know, looking back on it in hindsight, it's not the best sounding record I ever made, but it wasn't about so much the sound back then. It was about the energy of what was happening at the time and capturing that energy with those songs, you know. Did we spend hours and hours working on the guitar sounds on that record? No, we did them really quick.
Dave played Mesas, right? Does he still play Mesas? Did he play Mesas then? What did you guys use then?
We used some Mesas, triple rectifiers, and we used AC30s.
Okay.
And a couple Marshalls.
Okay.
It's kind of what he had down there. I mean, it was really
bare bones, right?
It was bare bones. It was whatever.
Did you have a console there or
Yeah,
not?
he had an API.
Okay.
He bought an API console that sounded fantastic.
Yeah.
And had like an LA2A and maybe one other compressor. That was it.
Nice.
There was like 6 pieces of gear in there.
Okay, wait, so the 251 was going into what?
For the vocals?
Yeah, was it going into an API into an
No, it was going
LA2A?
into a Martech mic pre.
Okay, talk about the Martech. This is
So the Martech.
This is your kind of vocal chain.
Yeah, so this vocal chain that I, you know, stumbled across that I love and I've been using it for years involves a Telefunken 251.
Yep.
A Martech MS-10 mic pre, which is made by a company called Martin Sound, which actually makes flying faders.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know how.
Well, tell them what flying faders used to be.
So flying faders is an automated system you can put on old consoles.
Yeah.
So that you could automate the mix.
Yeah.
And
into a
DBX 160X. Yeah. Like old school crusty
that you
compressor.
find in a bar.
In some sound PA rack that's got beer spilled all over it. And, you know, this one is super crusty. And I've just been using it for 20 plus years now. Like literally those 3 elements. And they just sound great. It's very clear and transparent. You know, it just works.
The Martechs are really clean.
Super clean, super
clean
punchy.
mic pre. Yeah.
Yep. And the DBX is a really fast compressor.
Yep.
You know, I think I like them because it's very similar to the compressor that's in an SSL channel. And I think in SSL, the compressor channel in the channel, I think it's based
in the
off,
channel strip.
Yeah, I think it's based off of a 160.
I think that's true. Yeah. How hard would you hit the compressor?
Hard.
Yeah.
Super hard. Like lights, like 20 dBs of compression.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Sounds great.
And that's
Yeah, you get that in your face, especially. I mean, Dave's singing quiet there and everything in the verse part.
And you know, the quiet stuff, it really brings it
Sucks
forward.
the vocal up front.
And then the loud stuff, it just holds it.
Yeah.
You can and the 160, the X is just so clean. You can just, I don't think I've ever had one distort on me. And you can just crush it.
So you still are using that?
Yep, the same one.
Okay, and never. I mean, nothing ever happens to those. They're like the 57 of compressors.
Yeah, it's beat up. I mean, you wouldn't even want to use it if you saw it.
Okay, and then Dave's. What would he have for drum mics there in his house? He pretty much have normal stuff, right?
We used like 57s on the toms.
Yeah.
I think I have a picture that shows like a 57 on the outside of the kick drum. I'm just like, oh my God, you know. I mean, we just used whatever. Again, it wasn't. You know, that record is not a sonic masterpiece in any way. But that record has an energy on it that we were able to capture because we didn't get overburdened with sound. You know, somebody like Dave doesn't want to sit there and listen to the kick drum for 10 minutes. He doesn't want to sit there and listen to you switch 14 different amps and 9 different. He wants to play the fucking guitar.
Right.
He's got the part ready.
Yeah.
He's ready to go. You know what I mean?
And he's going to nail it.
And he's going to play it probably twice, and it's going to be great. And then we're going to double it, and he's going to play it once. And that whole thing is going to take about 15 minutes.
Right.
And he's done.
Yeah.
And every song is like that on all the records all the recordings I've done with him. Like it's really quick. You know, he's interested in stuff sounding great.
Yeah.
But he's more interested in getting performances on tape.
Now you have people that you've worked with that are really more obsessive about things and that you'll search for guitar sounds for
Days.
forever, for days.
Spend days.
One record that is one of my favorite records that period that I've talked about is the Alice in Chains record that you did, their comeback record, Black Gives Way to Blue, which came out in 2009, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, one of the best sounding rock records I've ever heard. The guitar tones, the bass tones, the drum tones, everything about it sounds amazing. You had videos that you put on YouTube, thank you very much, back then, that were fascinating to watch. And you kind of had a glimpse. You guys were goofing around and stuff, but you could tell that there was a lot of experimentation going on.
Tons. You know, great sense of humor in that camp.
Yeah.
I mean, the laughing, oh my gosh. But when it comes down to go time, especially with Jerry, you know, we spent a lot of time listening to different combinations of guitars with amps. You know, that record, I really, really wanted the guitars to be like Dirt next level.
Okay, so I want to play a couple things off there.
So cool.
So I found myself in the sun. Oh yeah, a hell of a place to end a run. Oh yeah, California, fine. Somebody check my brain.
I love that riff.
Amazing.
Somebody check my brain. Check my brain.
Wow. Okay, when I heard that on the radio, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the sonics aside, it sounds phenomenal, but the riff,
It's the coolest guitar
everybody
riff
was
ever.
like, what? It's the coolest riff ever. The chorus is amazing. The lyrics, the melody, the change into it, the way the chorus hits. I mean, everything about the song is perfect.
It's a good one.
So interesting. When you got called to do this, what was your first thought? I mean, you were a massive Alice in Chains
I was
fan,
a huge
right?
Alice in Chains fan. You know, my first thought was, how's there going to be Alice in Chains without Lane Staley? Honestly, that was my first thought.
Yeah.
And I was interested enough to hear what they were doing because of that. I wanted to see what it sounded like. And I went out to them to listen to the demos because they wouldn't send them out anywhere. It was very, very tight. They were only talking to a couple different producers at the time. So I flew out there, went to the studio. You know, we're hanging out outside talking for like an hour. Jerry was playing golf, shows up in a pink golf shirt and a visor, golf shoes. I'm just like, hey, good to meet you. You know.
Like, wait a minute, is Jerry a good golfer or what?
I think so. I don't know. I've never played golf. So
I love that actually.
yeah, and I was just like, all right, Mr. Alice in Chains guy, cool outfit. You know. And so we go into the control room that they were working at, and he's like, all right, we're going to play this song. And he fucking presses play, and that starts coming out.
And is this?
And it's Check My Brain in the demo form.
Yeah.
And that riff, I'd never heard anything like that before. I mean, what riff sounds like that?
Nothing. No riff sounds like that. Did you say, where did you come with that riff?
I was just blown away, but I was very...
And when the chorus came in, did it sound like that?
Well, I was waiting for the singing, because I wanted to see what the singing was going to sound like. Because after you hear that riff a few times, you're like, okay, that's Alice, that's Jerry.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hear the vocals, and then the vocals started, and I was just like, oh my gosh, you did it.
Yes.
You did it. Yes. You know, and I remember I've listened to the whole song and it stopped, and I remember saying to Jerry, I was like, dude, I'm in. I don't need to hear anything else. They didn't play me any more songs, and I flew back to Nashville, and a couple months later, we started making the record.
One of my friends called me up, and we're both huge Alice in Chains fans. He's like, dude, have you heard the new Alice in Chains single? And I was like, it's unbelievable. How is it possible? Exactly the same thing that you said when you heard that. It's like, how is it possible that they did this? And then when the record came out and I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, this record is amazing. Well, the first song...
Are you kidding me? That's Alice in Chains.
Okay, what is that? Are those vocals in the background?
Yeah, those are vocals.
They make that sound so powerful
and haunting.
Yeah. The definition between the muted lick and then when the sustained chords come in, how do you get guitar sounds that have completely different
just tonal characteristics,
and they don't interfere with each other at all? First of all, what is he playing through? What would that be for that?
For like that riff?
One
thing that I wanted to do with this record too was I wanted Jerry's guitar tone and his playing to be just so undeniably him.
Yes.
Like, again, this was a very hard record to make. It was very complicated. There was a lot of factors. So for me, I wanted fans to hear this and know it was Alice in Chains before there was any
I'm going to interrupt. Okay, so Alice in Chains, when we think of Dirt, records like that, Dave Jordan that produced those records, the guitar tones on there are amazing.
Yes.
And he had a really unique way of tracking guitars.
Yes,
okay?
it was very split and lots of performances that create one part.
And did you know this going into this?
I knew about it a little bit. I knew about what I had read.
Did Jerry know what? I mean, he was there obviously, but did he know what Dave was doing?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know if he was paying enough attention back then. You know, he kind of knew the process, but he didn't really know the details. So me and my engineer Paul Fig, we really took a deep dive and going back and reading interviews, and so we
There were some good interviews with Dave where he talked about that.
He talked about it. So we kind of figured out what he was doing.
Yeah.
And we kind of did our own version of that.
Okay.
You know, and our own version of that was, first of all, getting Jerry to use his 2 original guitars, Blue Dress and the other one. Like, those are the guitars that are on this album. Because I wanted the guitar thing to be just undeniable. And it's a combination of guitars, amps, pedals, and what the part is.
Yeah.
You know, some tones are great for some parts, and some tones don't make other parts speak.
The sustain chords in the background, just having that one, it sounds like one chord strike. So there's no repeated things to get in the way of the other things. So by having that almost like a pad, really, like a distortion pad, and then it leaves room for the muted guitar.
The articulated guitar over the top of it.
Yeah.
You know, and finding a space for both of those parts is just a search.
And then you got the blah and boot and bump. Well, all those toms take up a lot of mid-range and stuff too. So you have all this mid-range information, and then you have the vocals in there, but still you can hear everything.
And then you got the bass.
So,
and all of those things are kind of rooted in the same kind of zone.
What kind of a bass? Is that like a Spectre bass or something? What were you guys using? Warwick, Spectres?
Mike has this bass. It's called the Moonburst.
Okay.
And it's
like custom based or
something? It's a custom bass. It's I think it's a Warwick or a Spectre. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
It's whatever he used on the Ozzy stuff, the Ozzy years and all that. And it just has a sound. The neck's been broken like 4 times on it.
Okay.
And that's the bass he's used on all 3 of the records I've made with him.
And what do you use to record bass? Like, what did you use on that? Do you remember? Do you like SVTs? You use the DI SVTs? What do you use?
My bass deal is usually a few different DIs.
Yeah.
A super, super clean one that I usually take out of the back of the Little Labs.
Yep.
A Sans amp, the old Tech 21 pedal that I've had since the 90s. I love that.
Yep.
Maybe I'll do another DI.
Will the Little Labs do a splitter? You'll take the DI out of the Little Labs?
Yeah, out of the line driver in the back.
Yeah, okay.
And just print that to a track. I mean, it sounds...
Itself.
It sounds great, yeah. So it's usually 3 different DIs, and then I'll mic an amp, either an SVT. I've been using an Orange bass amp since about 2006
like the 8200
now.
or whatever?
Yeah, the 8200.
Yeah. Those are great.
I love that head.
Yeah, those are great amps.
I mean, that through an 810 cabinet is great.
Yeah.
And that'll have a mic on it. And then
what kind of mic will you use for that?
I usually use a 47
FET.
Okay. Sometimes I'll use a 251 or a U67, depending on how loud it is.
And is the amp more for the tone, the grit, and things like that, or is that what are you trying to capture with the amp versus the DIs, or will you just use one of the things?
I'll use them all blended together.
Okay.
And for the amp, I'm usually trying to get what I'm not getting in the DIs, which is air, which is the speaker moving, which is, the distance between
why is
the
that
mic.
important?
Because low end needs space to develop. And even though you're putting a mic a few inches away from a speaker, those few inches are big space for a sound wave.
Yeah.
And
bass sound waves are incredibly large.
Yeah. And when you can get that get it in its natural habitat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then blend that in with DIs that don't have that space, your bass gets bigger. It gets clearer. And then I'll do an NS10 speaker on one of the speakers to get some sub. And it really depends. I don't do that on everything.
Yeah.
A lot of the lower super, super duper heavy tune bands I'm doing these days, I don't do that because there's no room for the sub anymore because the guitars are doing all that.
That's right. But you're talking things that are tuned down to B or B flat or whatever.
Yes.
A.
Yes. I actually record the bass the opposite way to try to get it so you could hear the bass.
Yeah.
But for Alice in Chains, Mike has such a style and he's got this bass and it's in his fingers and it's about 5 channels to get the bass sound on those things.
And this was recorded at Dave's Studio 606.
Correct.
Right? And that was a Neve. What kind of Neve did he have?
It's an 8058.
It's not the Neve that he put in from Sound City, correct? This is before that.
Correct. This is the original console from that studio.
And tell me about that console a little bit.
Great. It came from Chicago, came from a studio in Chicago. And we got it right when we were kind of building 606. We were, looking at other studios, kind of coming up with the things that we loved about certain drum rooms and control rooms. We wanted to make a big control room that everybody could hang out in. You could put lots of gear in it. And the drum room was, kind of a little bit of a rip-off of Sound City, the floor and the walls and stuff like that. So when it came time to get a console, we talked about getting a Neve, and we found one, and we bought it and put it in there. And it was in there for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then when the Sound City console became available, that replaced the 8058.
What happened to that one, the old console? What do you do? Does he still have that or not?
It's wrapped in plastic, sitting in storage somewhere.
I remember seeing some of the drum tracks in your videos. So these videos are on YouTube they're just little clips of the session. Are there longer videos of those things?
Oh yeah, I think Todd recorded everything. There's probably footage of all of them.
If you had to say how big that room was, how big is the live room in there?
The 606 room?
Yeah.
It's big. It's probably 50 feet wide. The ceilings are probably 50 feet tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. It's big. We wanted to build a big drum room, something that you could get a big drum sound in.
Did you have gobos that were using it all or not? Do you remember?
Yeah, we had some.
Okay.
We had some. I think we maybe put them around the drums. I have to go back and look, but the drums sound is pretty big and wide open on that record. That room was perfect for it.
Yeah.
But then we also did the guitar. We did all the drums, bass, and guitar at 606. So all those elements were done through that console.
Yeah. And that record took how long?
It took a little over 6 months to make. And it was working every day. It was very, very intense, and I remember we got done with all, the instruments, and it was just like, whew. Then we started the vocals, and it was just like, whoa. I mean, lots of layering, lots of figuring out. I mean, Jerry had a really good roadmap in his head of, what parts he was going to sing, what parts Will was going to have the lead on, what parts they were going to sing together, which was a lot of it.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of it. It was really smart how they did it. They didn't, put out a record that was like, boom, Alice in Chains with our new singer. It was Alice in Chains with our new singer, but we still sound like Alice in Chains.
Right.
Because Jerry really stepped up.
Yeah.
And kind of became the lead singer in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
As much as Will was and is, the lead singer in the band, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Jerry sings a lot.
Jerry sings a lot, and the sound it sounds like Alice in Chains. Jerry's voice is.
They both have fantastic voices individually.
Yeah.
I mean, William's voice is amazing. And when they sing together, it's kind of the sound.
Yeah.
And that's what got me when I heard those demos. I was like, wow, they did it. That's the sound right there.
Well, Jerry also, the intervals that he sings in with all the harmonies are really his own unique style.
Yeah.
And that is Alice in Chains. I hear it's like
Yeah.
nobody does those kind of harmonies.
Kind of defines the sound of the
That's
band.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. When the record came out, the people that were the big Alice in Chains fans, like myself, were like, wow.
People really embraced it.
Yes.
I
was
stoked.
yeah.
It was good.
It was amazing.
It turned out good.
Yeah.
I mean, I was stoked when we were done with it, and I remember hearing it mixed for the first time. I couldn't believe.
So Randy Staub mixed it.
Went to Randy Staub to mix it. He had mixed.
Why did you go to Randy?
I just love his mixes.
Yeah.
He had mixed a couple records for me previously. A band called Coheed and Cambria. He mixed that record, and I couldn't believe the sound of it. I was just blown away. So when it came time to mix this record, it was just like, boom.
Okay, what is good about his mixing? What do you like about it?
I love the bottom end. I love how clear and how big his mixes sound.
Yep.
And I can never turn his mixes up too loud. Like, I just want to hear them as loud as possible.
He mixes incredibly well. He starts soft and then he mixes incredibly loud. He mixes with a subwoofer. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first people that I saw that actually way back mixed with a subwoofer.
Me too.
That was kind of ahead of its time for like he was.
Yeah, you're right.
I think he must have known that people are going to be using subwoofers a lot more. The low end has to be bigger now.
He did, because when I heard the mix for Check My Brain back in the control room, I was sitting behind the board, and it was NS10s.
Yeah.
But he has a subwoofer on them.
Yes.
And when that shit kicked in, it was the biggest sounding thing I had ever heard. I remember just being like, I can't believe this is something I recorded.
Right.
Holy crap. And then every song just sounded like that. And I just love the way he mixes. He's my favorite mixer.
Did he, when you went up for the mixing of that, would he say, "Oh, don't come in until 2:00 or something," or no?
No, he mixed that record in L.A. because we
Okay.
were all in L.A. still.
Yeah.
So he came down and he mixed that at Henson.
Okay.
Which
Was everyone there when he was mixing, or no?
No, we would show up later. You know, I think I had already started working on another album at that point. So I was just coming down whenever he would say a mix was ready and listen. And I think me and Jerry and Shaun would meet him. And we'd listen to the mix and give him notes. And he would say, "Cool, come back in an hour." And we'd go hang out in the lounge. And he'd come back and say, "Give me another hour." We'd go back and he'd say, "Cool, come back tomorrow."
And what kind of SSL did he mix on then?
That was a
for
6000
Okay.
at Henson.
And you have a 6000,
I have a
right?
6000. Him mixing.
Oh, talk about the different types of SSLs for people that don't know. These SSL mixing consoles, talk about why people mix on them. Talk about the couple, just a quick overview of the variations of SSL.
Okay, so I'm no expert on it at all. But
Yeah.
there's the SSL 4000, which was introduced in the 80s. I think it was the alternative British console to the Neves.
Yeah.
Cleaner, more flexible, more transient power, dynamics on every channel. I mean, it was a groundbreaking console.
Yes.
And, those kind of became the standard at a lot of studios all over the country. 4000 was their first, then they did the 4000G.
Yep.
They started with the E series,
E-series.
I believe. Then it went to the G series.
Yep.
Then it went to the G Plus
G
series,
Plus,
which
yep.
was just different EQ curves, different EQ settings,
But every channel has compressor gates, EQs,
expanders,
expanders.
24 buses, so you could send stuff all over the place, Just a very flexible routing.
And they have a bus compressor on it.
in the center section after the master fader, or it might be before the master fader.
I think it could be either.
I know some of you could switch.
Yeah.
On my console, you can't. I'm pretty sure it's before the master
Yeah.
fader. But anyway, so that split from the 4000 into the 6000 series. One of the differences was the 6K has 3 stereo buses, A, B, and C. So on every channel, you can select what bus you want to put stuff in.
Just explain for people that are watching this that are kind of mildly interested, what is a bus?
So as a bus is a routing path. It's a path to send a signal down to, if you want to treat it different, it's a more flexible way to do something with the sound, I guess is what you would say. You could hit a bus on 3 channels and have 3 mics. Okay, you could have 3 mics on a guitar cabinet, assign them all to the same bus, and they'll all go down the same channel. Even though they're on 3 channels, you've just selected a bus on the same channel, so they're all going to flow that way.
Okay, so why did SSL consoles become the de facto console that people mixed on? People would, for rock music, people would track on Neves or APIs, and they would mix.
I guess because of the headroom and the clarity and the punchiness.
And the automation, too.
The automation, they evolved from the 4000 to the 6000 to the 8000 to now the 9000 series.
Yep.
They've all evolved just like the Neves did. For me, hearing Randy's mix on that 6000 and kind of knowing that's what he mixes his records on and just love the way that sounds. Like Chris Lord-Alge mixes on SSLs.
Yes.
His records sound amazing. There's some reason that console, if you hit it, get it all in the sweet spots, just sounds great with rock music. I don't know exactly why. And
wait. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but for people that are like, "Oh, you can mix just as well in the box,"
it's just totally different. I mean, it's completely different.
You could mix in the box if you wanted, but you use your console.
I do both.
Okay.
I do both depending on what it is.
Yeah.
If you've got a console and you can, run the same source through the console and then run it through Pro Tools and launch the plug-in version and actually sit here with both arms and move, the difference is uncanny. If you're able to have a shootout real time, right there.
Okay, so you're saying you use the plug-in version of what you're using on the console, and you can actually A/B them.
Yes.
And for people that actually have the two things back to back,
there's a noticeable difference. There is a noticeable difference. So you put that across the board and sum that all together, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So for me, that particular console, I mixed the Rush album Clockwork Angels on a 6000, and I mixed the Deftones record Diamond Eyes on a 6000 at a different studio. So I just automatically started to love the sound of that board. So I started looking for one, and I found one that was pretty cheap, and I bought it. I didn't even have a studio. I just put it in storage. I was like, one of these days, I'm going to have my own spot, and this is going to be my console.
When you got a call to work with Rush, what's that like?
So I actually reached out to them.
Okay.
Because I was online and I had read that Rush was back together writing, and they were going to go into the studio.
This is what, 2007, 2009?
This was 2006-ish.
Okay.
This was after they did not Counterparts, whatever the last record they made when they got back together. Vapor Trails.
Vapor Trails, right.
So I just, on a whim, was like, hey, man, reach out to Rush and see if they'd be interested in working with some young American kid, And they responded, thanks but no thanks. If we've already started, making the record with somebody else, and we loved your reel, cool, good luck. And I was just like, oh, crap,
crushed.
So a few weeks later, I get a call. Hey, guess what? Things went south with whoever they're working with.
Okay.
They'd like to meet with you. Come up to Toronto. I'm like, okay. Fucking booked myself a plane ticket the next day, flew up to Toronto. Their manager picks me up at the airport, conversation. All of a sudden, he's like, all right, kid, call me when you're done. Go knock on the door. I'm just like, okay. I'm walking to, this is Geddy Lee's house. So I go over and knock on the door, and the door opens, and there he is, peering at me over the glasses. And,
right.
Hey, you're Nick? Yeah, come on in. And I mean, just from that minute forward, we just hung out. Me and him and Alex hung out in his kitchen, and we didn't even talk about music at all. They were totally feeling me out. They wanted to see if they could hang out with me.
Yeah.
That's really what it was.
Big important thing.
We didn't talk about music at all. We talked about history. We talked about politics. We talked about what kind of wine I liked. We talked about food. We talked about stuff like that. And then eventually at one point, after like 6 espressos, I was like, are you guys going to play me some music? So we go down to Ged's little studio down there, and they start playing me some demos. And I was just like, wow, these are great. But there was no Neil on them yet.
Right.
They were just kind of like finger drummy machine stuff that Alex had done. And immediately I was like, where's the drums? Neil needs to be, where's the fills? And I want to hear this and that. And they were just like really kind of taken aback, because I guess nobody had ever really come into the Rush world like that and been like, I got an idea for you, And so then I met Neil a few days later. I flew back and met Neil a few days later in LA, and they called and said, the guys think they want to do this with you. And then we started doing it, and it was great.
That first record you did, was that at Allaire?
That was at Allaire up in upstate New York.
Is that like near Lake Placid in the Adirondacks or something?
Yeah, it's in the Adirondacks. Beautiful.
Is it out in the middle of nowhere?
It is. It's on the top of a mountain.
Okay.
It used to be a family summer home escape. I mean, the driveway literally just snakes up. I think it's 2 miles up the side, and you finally get up to the top, and there's this beautiful house up there.
Okay, so I remember seeing a picture, I mentioned this to you earlier, about with Neil's drum set mic'd up. Mm-hmm. And you had top and bottom mics on all the toms.
Yep.
There was, what is there, like 40 channels of drums or something?
Easily, right? Easily. I mean, it's 9 drums with 2 mics on each, so that's 18 right there.
Okay, so when I saw that, I thought to myself, how do you fit all those mic stands in one spot? Mm-hmm. What is the answer to that, Nick? I mean,
well, you gotta, once you get everything close, you gotta get the big stands where you can, come from 14 feet away down to the top. They had everything up there. That studio was amazing. And we were only gonna be there for 4 days. We were only gonna do the drums. And I was walking around and I was seeing how they were acting, and I was like, we can't leave here.
Beautiful place,
I was like,
right?
this is where we need to make this record.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
And then at dinner that night, I kind of dropped that on them, and I was like, guys, we should stay here. They were, no, we're going back to Toronto. And I was like, I think we should stay here. And we did. And we made the entire record.
It's not that far from Toronto.
No, it's not that far.
Yeah.
And we were taking like weekends off here and there, but, if you didn't leave, you're just hanging out in the studio.
Yeah.
You know, we just hang out and jam and.
Okay, so what's it like? You mic up Neil's drum kit, and the first time you're a huge Rush fan, and when you start getting drum sounds, and you start hearing Neil play. Come on, you must be psyched.
Well, that started when we were doing the pre-pro. We were in this little pre-pro place in Toronto, and I remember showing up the very first day at pre-pro, and nobody was there yet. And I walk in, I put my backpack down, I look through, I'm like, there's the drums. So I went in there and kind of looking at it, just like looking around, pick up the sticks, and I sit down, and I was like, and I hear somebody come in yelling at me, hey, what the fuck? And it was Neil's drum tech, Lorne. I hadn't met him.
He didn't know who you were?
No, he didn't know who you were. Neil hadn't told him yet.
Okay.
And I got completely scolded, like, don't, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm Nick, the producer. And me and Lorne have become amazing friends since, but he was flipping out because I was just like,
how could you not do that?
Well, you can't.
Right.
There it is. And there's nobody around. I'm going to pick up some sticks and play that thing. So, I remember when we were doing the pre-production, just listening to the mics of just that. It's like pushing up. And it's like, wow, that's the sound. And,
Come on, didn't you want them to break into some old tunes and stuff? Or what?
Yeah, they did. Hey guys, we need to check the mics. Give me a little bit of Circumstances. Oh, we haven't played that one forever. It's go, just like they played it last week or something,
right.
I mean, the Rush fan in me was losing his mind, but the producer guy in me
had to be cool.
I know exactly what I wanted. As a Rush fan, I know what kind of record I wanted to hear Rush make.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty good idea of what the other Rush fans wanted too. So that was my
that's a good place to be, I think, as the producer.
I wasn't like freaking out because I was in the studio with Rush. I was freaking out because I was in the studio with Rush and had an opportunity to try to make one of the best records they had ever made because they had the material for it. They had the songs. And I knew that. And I could tell that they really, really wanted to be with somebody who would answer their questions. What do you think of this? I don't like it. Okay. What about this? Ooh, I like that. Not, I like this, I like that. It's all great, it's all great, it's all great. They really I think they wanted somebody who was just going to be brutally honest with them about the songs, the parts, and the performances.
Okay, let me ask you some technical things. Was Neil playing DW then?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. How many snares would he have? Would he like what would be his setup? What were things that would change out from his on his kit? Would he change anything out ever?
No, not really. He was the kit that he had and was playing was very much the kit that he wanted to play.
Okay.
He wasn't interested in listening to different snare drums.
Okay.
He loved the way that snare drum sounded and felt, and it fit on his stand good.
Yeah. And his tech knew exactly what he wanted. He would set it up.
Yeah, tune everything.
Tune everything.
Neil had a very specific way he liked to tune his drums.
Yeah.
I didn't tune any of those drums or do anything. That was all Lorne. His tech did all of it.
And would that happen every day before the session?
Yeah.
He'd get in there and...
Yeah. Yeah.
And was there a lot of head changing or no head changing or what?
Yeah, mainly snares.
Yeah.
We didn't change a lot of toms because, Neil has a way, even though he hits really hard, he would never pit the heads.
Yeah.
I want to say the tom heads on Clockwork Angels the whole album was one set of heads.
And what kind of heads would he use on there?
It's funny, he didn't really care about that stuff. I don't ever remember having a discussion with him about it. It was always me and Lorne talking about it. Hey, Lorne, let's put, I want to use clear amps on the toms. Okay, well, we have a DW version of heads because DW was making drum heads.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those?
Yes, I do.
That's what we used.
Yeah.
They had they were clears, but they had some textured thing on the top.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Some muting.
Yeah.
So that's what we used, and I kind of think those were the factory heads that came on those drums.
Right.
But they sounded great, and it was a big miking setup. His drum set was hard to play because Neil was so big. It always bummed me out when I wanted to go play his drums. His snare was so high. You had to
How tall was Neil?
He was 6'5", 6'6".
Was he that tall?
I mean, when I was standing with him, I would have to look up.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just fun. And I remember the first time we started actually recording, like, okay, we're recording for real. It was the very first song. I think he played it twice. And I was listening and I was listening and I heard him do something. And I was like, man, that should be a little different or maybe something different. And I just walked out into the drum room, like opened the door and went out there, and I'm walking up on the kit and he's got his head down, he's playing. He's not even looking at me. And I'm like trying to get his attention, like, hey, stop. And he just looks at me, he's like, and I realized that had never happened before. Wow. Yeah. I was like, But I was like, also, hey, dude, you know that fill you did? Can you try, this, digga or something like this, and, maybe hit the side snare on the part of the fill, and then instead of going to the crash cymbal here, take it to the China back here on this side. Like, I gave him, 3 things. And he was like, oh, okay. And I turned around and started to walk back, and I was like, oh, shit. And I go back in the control room, and Geddy and Alex are just like, Geddy's peering at me under the glass. He's like, he goes, he's going to love you, kid. He goes, that's what he wants. And from that point on, me and Neil really, really had a great producer, artist relationship with, he would ask me constantly, what do you think of this? Should I do this here? What do you think of that? And I would kind of guide him to the point to where when we were tracking drums, I was this far away from him with my drumstick and my book and a music stand. Every drum track, we were just watching each other, and I'm airing fills to him as before they're about to happen. Like, hey, fill into the chorus, and he would do it. Like, he was following, I was conducting him. And then one day he comes in with a conductor stick and gave it to me. He's like, since you're my conductor, you must have the proper stick.
Okay, so when you went in to make the record, was there demos of all the songs?
Everything but a few of the songs. There was no Far Cry, there was no Larger Bowl, there was no Malnar. And I really wanted to try to rush to have a single. So that's what we did, Far Cry. Yeah.
Great film.
I love that film. Just the feel of it. Pace.
This part.
Go between the ride and the hi-hat?
Yeah.
Bass pedals. First time they had used Taurus pedals and signals.
Wow. Okay, so Taurus pedals. Now, being a Rush fan, talk about Taurus pedals. Did you suggest, hey, why don't we use some Taurus pedals on this?
Of course I did.
Of course you did. Now, explain what Taurus pedals are and why they're important to Rush.
So they're important to Rush because when you hear them come in, it adds a low end
Tell them what they are.
So Taurus pedals are basically, like an organ. You play with your fingers, but there's part that you play with your feet.
Yeah.
And that's usually the bass, the lowest octave of bass registers.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's playing the organ, they've got a couple decks here, all the octaves, but they're playing with their feet.
The bass parts.
The bass parts.
Yeah.
So the Taurus
and
pedals.
historically, Geddy would use these.
Correct. For when he would switch to keyboards.
Yes.
Or when he was playing certain registers of the bass, he would step on the bass pedals to fill out the bottom end.
Yeah, and give sustaining. A lot of times for sustaining.
Sustain, sustain, and just a good blow end bump.
Yes.
So
did you say, why don't we use some Taurus pedals on this?
I did, and they didn't have any.
So what do you do?
We had to rent them.
Okay.
We had to rent Taurus pedals from.
That's hilarious.
We had to rent Taurus pedals from a Toronto rental company.
Oh my God.
We get them shipped to Allaire. They're their pedals. They're their old pedals. No. Geddy's looking at it. He's down on the floor. He's like, "Hey, look at this switch. That's our modded switch," because he had a mute mod switch on his. So we rented the pedals they used on the old albums and tours for Snakes and Arrows.
That is hilarious.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that, they had really used the real old Taurus pedals in years and years and years. And
Come on, they were psyched too, right?
They were psyched. Oh man, I got,
Dude, when Alex plays the first chord there, that, the F sharp with the open strings there, that's like the Rush sound.
It's the Hemispheres chord.
The Hemispheres chord.
Yeah.
And as soon as you hear that, it's like.
And those were elements that I was able to bring to the table. Not to rip off or copy, but for it to feel.
It's like an homage,
Just like on Clockwork Angels. We homaged Bastille Day and Anthem and like 4 or 5 other songs on parts because I'm like, dudes, don't be scared to do that. Those are your riffs. I want to hear do-do-do-do-do-do. I want to hear that stuff.
When you're talking about Anthem and Bastille Day, and I always laugh. I mean, that's my era Rush.
Yeah.
The when you're old and you're in your 60s and you think about Rush, those are the first records that I was.
The energy and the riffs are amazing.
Yes.
And Geddy's energy. And that was a big thing that I wanted to put into it was energy and just like Far Cry is a perfect example of that. Rush hadn't done a song like that in years and years and years and years.
And this came late. The song came later in the session or no?
That song came later. That was kind of me saying, guys, we need a couple more songs. We need a couple more maybe singly potentially.
But you don't really say that though, right? Or do you say that?
Yeah, I said that.
Rush had singles.
Yeah, they know the deal.
Many singles.
They know what's up. If you're gonna, try to make some noise, then every song can't be 8 minutes long.
Right.
Let's do something that it's.
I mean, Rush had plenty of hits.
Huge.
Yeah.
But in 2007 or 2006. Rush had just gotten back together and they put out a record that the Rush fans didn't seem to love. It was okay.
Yeah.
And the guys were kind of on the fence about it or whatever. So it was really a deliberate focus to let's do something that's kind of tight and it's hooky, but it's weird. Gang, 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 gang. Like that's total Rush. Who does that?
Right.
And the Hemispheres chord and it really got fun when I did the flip with Ged. Those vocals, those high vocals were the harmonies. And as we started doing the vocals,
right,
I switched the blend.
You're like, this sounds like the lead vocal. Then,
that sounds like Geddy Lee from Rush.
Yeah, right.
Not the low octave version that Geddy had kind of been beaten into submission to do in the 90s because his high voice was too weird or unacceptable or whatever. That was always one of my favorite parts of Barouch.
Dude, come on, that's amazing.
So again, I'm in there, we're recording and we're done with the vocals, and I'm like, man, those high background vocals, they're doing it. So I just took the low ones and turned them down and pushed the high ones up, and the high vocals were actually the harmonies. We did that on a few songs because to get Geddy up on top of the track again. That's right. That's the Rush I love.
Yeah. Okay, who mixed this record?
Rich Chicky mixed Snakes and Arrows. He was also the engineer. He engineered the record. Canadian, fantastic guy, amazing engineer.
Yeah.
I mean, he had engineered for Dream Theater him and Alex were friends. They had been recording a bunch together, so I knew that there was always there was a vibe there already. So I wanted to leave that intact. The guys were comfortable around Rich. Rich is also a Rush super fan like myself. I mean, we'd be driving home just being like, "Oh my God, can you believe what we're doing? We're recording with Rush." We'd go sit at the bar and have drinks and just sit there and talk about the day and, we got to keep it cool tomorrow. We got to keep it cool,
So how long of a process was making this record?
I'd say it probably took about 6 weeks.
Okay.
It didn't take that long.
That's kind of like a normal record.
Yeah, I think the drums, maybe 4 or 5 days to get all the drum tracks.
And did they make records kind of in that way? Like, do the drums, then do the bass, then do the guitars?
Well, I switched it up on them this time.
Okay.
They traditionally did it that way, drums, bass, guitar, but I like to do the guitar before the bass. So
Why?
did just because I like to layer the guitar and create the scenery with the guitar without the bass being there for tonal reasons.
Yeah.
I want to get the bottom out of the guitar. It's hard to get that when the bass
so
is there.
you're big about getting bottom on the guitar.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
So just the low end, there's just, when you're standing next to an amp and you're playing, there's a low end part of the sound that hits you in a certain way that makes you play better. Mm-hmm. It makes you feel everything in a certain way. And I just remember from back when I was playing bands, that feeling, I try to get the same thing through the monitors. And just the bottom end is just so important with guitars. Again, speaker, the space between the speaker and the mic, it just fills it out, and there's just a bigness and a thickness that happens. I don't know, it's hard to describe.
Okay, so let's talk about how you like to record guitars. Has it changed much, or you use 2 mics, 3 mics, 4 mics? How many mics do you like to use?
So it's kind of evolved from, 2 to 3 mics to 4 or 5. I mean, honestly, it really depends on what it is. Certain bands I don't feel like require maybe as much bigness, but more attention to detail, and sometimes the bigness can wash that out. Typically I'll start with a U47 FET, a Neumann, 10 dB pad. I use an SM7, which is basically a big 57.
Big 57.
A little more top, a little more bottom.
What about the
more directional?
What about the switches on that?
Flat.
Flat.
Yeah, flat. I'll put those, phase aligned. Basically,
same speaker, different speakers.
I'll use the same speaker for those two, and I'll mic one side of the, right where the dust cap is, and then I'll mic the other side with the other one. Then maybe the other top left speaker, I'll put a 421, and maybe on the bottom I'll put an RCA BK5
ribbon mic. Yep.
I don't really use Royers that much.
Why?
Just because they pull stuff in from the back. I don't
know. The back of the mic.
Yeah, from the back of the mic.
Yeah.
And I don't like to baffle things too much.
Yep.
I like the guitars to be big and open and have a lot of bottom end. I try to get all the bottom end I can on tape because you can filter it. You can take that bottom away, but to get that true low end, you really need to get it from the source.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about this. When if Randy's mixing your guitars, is he high passing them at all? Do you know?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay,
actually.
Or Rich or whoever that's any of the people.
I would say probably because I do that when I mix other people's stuff. So probably a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you think about modelers and things like that? About Axe-FXs, about Kempers, about Neural DSP, things like that?
I think they're amazing. I think they all have their place. Mm-hmm. I think that...
Do they have a place at your place?
They do, but
Okay.
they don't have so much of a place as like the main thing.
Okay.
Because I like to use them in concert with the real amps. I use those things mainly for overdubs.
Yeah.
I like to get the big kind of foundation on everything, and then maybe, I go to
Overdubs where you get ease of use. You can sit there, you
Exactly.
can tweak them and find the right spot without getting up
Exactly.
from your chair.
Exactly. I can mess around with different choruses and delays and things like that and not have to search for cables or batteries or any of that crap. And they sound great.
Yes. Yep.
I've recorded a bunch of my own amps into them to be able to mess with them. It's interesting to see how it translates. I'm not against any of it, to be honest with you. And I use all I use all of those things at the same time. I mean, a record I'm making right now, we spent tons of time with guitars and amps and pedals, and then we did some overdubs with the Helix for the clean sounds. They're amazing, clean, washed out reverbs and delays. I mean, it's so quick and simple to get amazing sounds now. I mean, we should spend a whole day on something like that.
Yes.
Literally an entire day.
Oh, yeah.
And you can spend 2 minutes now.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
But for me, I got to have the real amps in there. Because again, they're not moving air. We're talking about math here. There's no analog anything happening in this. It's computing and computation, so it's going to be what it is. And, if you start, in my opinion, to do too many layers of plug-in or in-the-box style stuff, it all kind of it never really gets any bigger because you're kind of, stifled by the sample rate.
Right.
You're only going to get so far.
We were talking about reverbs yesterday, that a lot of old school reverbs that lexicons, PCM 70s, the 224s, 480Ls, or could be Rev 7s or SPX 90s, things like that. Some of these things that are have very low bit rates can still sound better than, to me, they sound better than a lot of the plugins.
Yeah, reverb has always been the biggest bum out for me in the plugin world. I don't even understand how you can do it. How you can have something mathematically, because it's all math, be reverbing over tracks that are, can't comprehend how that is. But in the analog world, it makes complete sense to me. And probably like yourself, I just gravitate towards those older boxes, the Eventides, the PCM 70s, the EMT R2D2 plate.
Yes.
That is, to me, that is the magical snare reverb. That's the sound.
Okay, so is it that we've heard these on records for so long too? Is that another part of it?
I think so, probably. We've grown up becoming accustomed to the reverbs that we've heard on Pink Floyd records.
Yes.
That we hear on the Beatles. Those are plates and chambers and real rooms where sound is echoing and getting captured by a microphone. It's just different. There's just something about it.
I'm trying to think who I interviewed recently that was talking about this, that every studio had their own chambers and they sounded different from one another. And the records sounded the way they did because of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, Sound City, there was a plate above the control room, there was a plate in the shop, and there was a chamber that had tractor tire prints on it, on the walls from when there were tractors driving on it as a slab, which I always thought was bizarre.
When you have a reverb that you like, and I asked you this yesterday, though, you print them in the session.
Yeah, I do.
What does that mean when I say that?
So I'll print it to its own track.
Yeah.
And that way you can, even manipulate it even further.
Yeah.
It's been printed.
Yeah.
And because also a lot of times when I'm creating these sounds and these scenes, that's the sound.
That's the sound, and it may sometimes you don't even have that gear, or the gear doesn't work again, and
exactly
you get a sound, and if you printed it, it's part of the session.
It's part of the session, and you can't assume that everybody has the same stuff.
Yeah.
Some studios have every plugin known to man. You go to the next one, and they don't have any of them.
Yeah.
And I've got my own kind of custom arsenal of effects that I use. But reverbs are, for me in the box, I like the more effecty reverbs, like the shimmery reverbs, because they're actually doing something different and you can hear it. But if I'm going to go for reverb, I'm going to go to an old Eventide or something and print the stuff through it and print it back into Pro Tools, and it just sounds great.
Talking like H3000
or SPX 90 or Rev 7. Rev 7 has some great drum reverbs on it. And gates too, like gated snare and stuff like that. Oh, they're awesome sounding.
Alice in Chains, the reverbs that we're hearing on that, those are reverbs. Are there delays as well?
Oh yeah, tons,
right?
And a lot of those vocal scenes I created while we were tracking. The reverbs and delays were printed for Randy, so he would just push two faders up, and there's all the effects right there.
Yeah.
All the vocal effects.
So you print the delays and everything. Because it's really part of the arrangement.
It's part of the sound.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the song. Those movements and those delays become part of the mass.
Let's say you track and you've got 4 different mics on a guitar amp. Then at some point, that's just one part, right?
That's just one part,
One part.
and usually I'll take those 4 mics and put them on a bus, like we talked before.
Yep.
And all 4 of those mics will go to one track.
Right. And you print that one track. And
One track.
That becomes part of the sound.
Becomes part of the sound. And then if we double it, maybe we'll switch the guitar, maybe we'll switch the amp head, maybe I'll go over and just...
Okay, and why do you do that, Nick?
Just to make a little bit of a difference.
To widen the image.
To widen the image a little bit.
It doesn't sound like big mono. Right?
Exactly. You know, and just something about doubling something just adds an extra thickness and an extra width to it and a little character, especially if it's really, really tight.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I'll just go over to the head and move the knobs a little bit. All right, cool, let's record it. Not even listen to it. We'll just start recording. And just changing one little thing makes it not identical, but it's still in the same ballpark to where it's providing the support that it needs.
Okay, so with all these low-tuned bands that you work with, how difficult is it to keep things in tune, and what are some of the fixes for that?
It's very difficult, and it's very time-consuming.
Yeah.
And you have to get crazy with string gauges. There's a bridge called an Evertune now, which is something that I've installed on some of my recording guitars, specifically for the low-tuning bands. Because, you know, let's be honest here, as budgets have shrunk, time in the studio have shrunk, you're going to spend 2 hours a day tuning a guitar. We don't have time for that.
Right.
You know, so I'm really looking for guitars that are built for low tunings, i.e. long scale guitars and guitars with Evertunes. You know, the Evertune, for me, has been one of the big saviors of drop A, drop B, drop A sharp, drop C sharp. I mean, that is no regular scale instrument is meant to do that. It's not a bass.
Okay, so Nick, when you have drop A, what do you do with the bass? Like, how do you get definition between the low guitar and the low bass?
Well, a lot of the guitar nowadays has dropped an octave below the bass. So I'll just keep the bass where it is. And that's how you can hear it. I don't try to drop the bass lower than the guitars or even kind of get into the same ballpark as the guitars. The bass is usually an octave higher now because the guitars are lower.
I always noticed that through certain periods of music, rock music, some records will be where the bass will be the dominant low end and the kick drum punches through. And other records, the bass drum takes more of the low end and occupies more, and the bass kind of sits higher than it, is in a different register. Some mixers will just mix their records that way. Some people will track records that way. When I listen to old Nirvana records, I hear the bass actually being the dominant low-end instrument.
It is, yep.
Right? The first song just popped into my mind, Dive, that's on Incesticide. The bass carries the bottom end, and Dave's
kick
bass
drum provides the punch and the thump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your theory on that? And do you make records where the bass drum has a different function?
Couple things. Depending on what it is and what the tuning is, a lot of times, you know, the bass and the kick drum are providing, you know, the punch and the bottom end, and you can hear them really well. Like Nirvana's a perfect example. There's not a ton of guitar tracks.
Right.
There's like one on the left and one on the right, and maybe an overdub.
Yeah.
Just like old Aerosmith records, old Kiss records, old Rush records.
Yes.
The bass is very satisfying because there's space for it.
That's right.
And in a lot of modern recording, there is no space because there are so many tracks and layers of the same thing happening that it just gets collapsed. You can't even hear it. Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter how much you turn the bass up, you still can't hear it because there's so much other stuff happening. You know, it's not until you start to mute things that all of a sudden the bass will come out.
Yeah. Does the kick drum occupy a different place depending on the band?
It really depends on the tuning. I mean, if you're in E standard, for example, and there's not a lot of overdubs, and you've got, you can make the kick drum massive.
Yeah.
But if you're tuned really low, now the guitar and the bass are in the kick drum territory, so you have to EQ the kick drum out of that territory.
Right.
Hence to get that clicky.
Yes.
That clicky, triggery, super mid-range kick. And you can still put bottom in it, but it's hard to put the same bottom in it. You can only put so much bottom in these things before you can't hear anything.
Right.
It just sounds kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And a lot of the low tuning things have gotten so big now in the bottom that you have to put in tons of drum samples and things to get, to get an acoustic drum set to compete by the time you get to the mix with tons of guitar overdubs and bass overdubs, and especially now with all the direct sounds and all the plugins and all the stuff. An acoustic drum set just gets buried by the time you get to it. I mean, you can't even hear it anymore. Then you got to start going to samples to try to get the drums to punch back through this wall of sound that you've created. And I think that's when things get into, maybe starting to get dialed in a little bit weird or fake, or that's when you have to, okay, what's going to get the bottom end here? The guitars or the kick drum or the bass?
I mean, you have to decide.
Something's going to take a hit.
That's right.
Something's going to take a hit.
Not everything can have tons of low end.
Exactly. And especially with modern recording, when you were recording with tape machines, you could only go so low.
Yes.
Pro Tools is wide open.
What would have happened with drop B tunings on tape if you're doing, or drop A?
Well, Korn was doing that.
Yeah.
So, and that,
Fieldy's bass sound was
clicky.
A click.
And so were the drums.
So were the drums. That's right.
That was kind of the beginning of
That's
what
right.
I'm saying.
That's right.
Because all of a sudden the guitars are all the way down
That's
here,
right.
and the bass.
Yeah.
You got to get the drums above those.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when the clicky, like Pantera and Injustice for All.
Yes.
Even though I think that record's in standard tuning, which is crazy.
It's like, I know, right?
But there was so much bottom in James's guitar
Yeah.
and the bass that you can't hear.
Yes.
That they went for the clickier kick drums and stuff
Yes.
like that. That
Yeah.
kind of started to shape that sound.
Well, it's interesting when I listened to the Black album with the, that was probably the peak of the clicky kick drum and
Yep.
everything. But it's interesting because that's a sample on there, basically.
Probably.
Yeah, but it actually has bottom end to it.
Yeah.
So it's actually interesting because it has so much top end, but it actually has nice low end to it.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
And it cuts, but the clicky part is what gets all the punch and the attack.
Yeah. We were listening to something earlier in the car.
It's actually 4 parts,
Is it?
all put together. So cool.
So this is Big Wreck. When you have a lot of instruments like this, right? That guitar comes in, and you can still hear the reverb on it and stuff, right? Even though there's so much stuff going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a different kind of thing. It's not those heavy guitars, but you have other things that are occupying a lot of these mid-range frequencies and stuff.
Right.
How do you even hear those effects? Why is it you hear? Because you have to really get the exact right sound.
You got to get the right sound.
Right.
Like as it's going to tape.
Yes.
I mean, those sounds weren't added later.
Right.
He played it through that sound.
Yeah.
Which also adds to the way it is and the way that the bends and the movements flow through the reverb to give it that sound. And that, overdub needs to be out on top of everything else and feel big and take over and be commanding. You know, I wanted that particular thing to kind of be like David Gilmour showed up all of a sudden.
Right.
With his Strat.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it feels like.
You know, you can have these heavy guitars that are low tuned and the bass is up the octave and all this stuff is taking up space. But space can get taken up by many different ways.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have to sculpt
the
sounds.
everything.
You have to sculpt everything.
And then you've got to put a lead vocal on it, which is the most important part of the whole thing.
Right.
That's what everybody's really listening
so
to.
when it comes in here, let's listen a little.
You're only vulnerable when you're open, wide open. 'Cause I'm fine, I'm rooted down, but those walls ain't coming down. As the better part of us goes up in flames, and we're scorching another field.
You got to find space for the tom overdub.
So much to be revealed. As the better part of us goes up in flames.
Okay, so that's Ian Thornley there. I always thought it was kind of unfair that Ian is such a good singer, a phenomenal singer, and he's a great guitar player.
Man, he is.
That's just not. And he's a cool guy on top of
Yeah,
it all.
yeah.
There's something not fair about that.
Yeah,
Nick.
yeah, I know. Ian's just, it's hard to just put anything on Ian other than just, he's just amazing. His talent.
What's like the craziest producer story that
I can
you
tell.
have here? Yes, that you can tell.
Man, so there's a good one this one time. And this is when we were, and this is one of the hard things about being a producer is, being able to work with musicians and work with artists and rock stars and kind of be like, hey, you know what? It's okay. It could be better. It's not great. So there was this one time when we were making Black Gives Way to Blue, and the last song on there is called Black Gives Way to Blue, and it's basically Jerry, saying goodbye to Lane, and it's super sad. It's like the saddest song I've ever recorded. We were all in tears when the vocals were going down, when Will and Jerry were singing. And we did a lot of the vocals, them singing at the same time, which was really cool on that record. So anyway, we go to the point of where we're going to do the piano overdub. And somebody had reached out to Elton John. And Elton John came back with, I'd love to do it. And we're like, oh my God, Elton John's going to play on this song. This is going to be awesome. Great. So we all go, we all fly to Vegas, and because Elton's got a studio there because he had a residency, and he's like, well, you can only work from, Elton's got, 28 minutes in his schedule to work with you guys. So from 3 p.m. until 3:28, you can work with Elton. We're like, okay, awesome. So we're in there, we get the song up. It was me and the rest of the guys in the band, maybe a couple managers and somebody from the label. They wanted to watch. It was Elton John.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God, I love Elton John. I've been listening to Elton John since I was a little kid. It's some of my earliest memories. Because my mom was a huge music fan. That's why I'm doing this, is because of my mom. I used to, when I was little, she was listening to rock music. And I was listening to it with her. So, oh my God, Elton John. We go into the studio, and there's the piano, and we're in the control room. We get the song up, and Elton comes in. We're shaking hands. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. And he listens to the song. He's like, okay, well, this is the song. And we play it. He listens to us. Oh, okay, great. He goes out there, and we press it, and we're like, okay, hey, I'm on the top back. All right, here it comes, Elton, And it's me sitting up on the desk, and Jerry's sitting right here. And everybody else is kind of standing behind us. And the song starts, and it's just oozing with sadness. It's just like slow and vibey and haunting sounding. And Elton starts to play what sounded like a Broadway show. He was just like, and I was just like, this couldn't be more not what it should be.
Right.
And as this track is rolling, I'm just like, oh my God, what am I going to say? I'm going to have to say something. And I look over at Jerry, and he already knows it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And he is just smiling at me, just like,
You're going to have to deal with this.
what are you going to say? What are you going to say, dude? And I'm just like, oh my God. So he gets through the end, and it was Elton John, and tracks fade, and he does his final little fling, flary thing on there. And of course, everybody, I hit the talk, I'm like, all right, cool, Elton. Let's do another one. And everybody's like, oh my God, Elton, that was amazing. That was great. And I'm just like, shut up. That was not great or amazing. And that wasn't it. So I'm just like, oh my God, I'm about to have to tell Elton John that was completely wrong. But I'm like, all right, cool. Talk back. Hey, Elton, dude, cool, but this song is like, these guys are saying goodbye to their friend. I was like, that was a little too like Broadway, like Pirates of Penzance style Broadway. And he was totally taken aback, like, what? And I was just like, oh shit. But I was like, Elton, it needs to be a little sadder, And he was like, kind of, okay, play it again. And then he just went total sadness on it. And that's what you hear on the record.
Wow.
But for a sec, but again, as a producer, I can't believe I had to tell Elton John that was couldn't have been more wrong.
Right.
It couldn't have been more of the wrong vibe.
But you were set for just what he played the second time. That's what you were expecting the first time.
Exactly.
And then he's doing this, and you're like,
exactly.
Oh my God, what am I going to say?
Well, yeah, and again, it's like you got to be able to confront this thing, because that's why I'm there. That's why you guys want me in the room, man. They want me to push them. Not only have I already pushed all four of them to the maximum, I'm going to do the same thing to Elton John, and they expect me to do that, especially this guy sitting right here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And with Elton John, with Neil Peart, with Dave, with Amy Lee, with Chino, with all these bands that I work with, I think that they really want that honesty, and that they know I love music, and they know I react to certain things, and if I'm not reacting a certain way, they pay attention to that, I've noticed, and that really opens me up to be able to push them. I mean, how cool is it to be able to, work with these great musicians and be like, yeah, that was pretty good. Now do it again.
Yeah.
Let me.
This time right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so one of the bands we haven't talked about, but we talked about a lot yesterday, that kids today connect with, which is Deftones.
Deftones, yeah.
Why do kids connect with that?
I think because they have stayed true to their sound, and they have really stayed in the framework of what they've kind of always done. They still sound like the Deftones. And I think that's really resonating with the kids, because they're not trying to sound like anything that's happening right now. They're still sounding like they sound.
They don't really sound like anyone. So I went back and I was listening to a couple songs. I mean, I have been a fan of the band for 25 years. I mean, how long have they been out now? Right?
Yeah.
30 years. 30 years.
Almost 30.
And like everything about the band is very original sounding.
Very.
So now, especially against newer rock bands, they sound even more different. And I think that the kids, kids just hear it and they're like, wow, this is. It just has such a fresh sound if they're hearing it for the first time.
It has a freshness to it, because I think a lot of the stuff that's going on right now has a very sameness, has a very samey quality to it in the sonics and the parts and the way it's recorded. And they've got a really unique sound and a style that they haven't really deviated from it. They don't follow trends.
What was the first record that you worked on? It was
Diamond Eyes.
Diamond Eyes.
Across
Okay, now a song like this, it's actually very sparse, the verse part.
Yeah.
Right? Just like one main guitar riff.
It is.
Then when it breaks into the chorus,
Yep.
what is it that, is there a key, are there keyboards in there
There's
that, like
yep.
a pad that comes
There's
in,
some
right?
couple different keyboard pads that come in the chorus, and I believe there's another guitar that comes in the chorus just to make the chorus
But
lift
it's
and grow.
still very sparse.
That's drums, bass, guitar, and a vocal.
That's right.
That's all that is.
Okay, so when you have less things going on, the vocal has more of a chance to connect with people, and that people can hear more of the emotion because it's not fighting with a bunch of stuff.
Absolutely. There's just not stuff firing all around it constantly that it's having to fight.
Yeah. You have a riff, and the riff's it's a repeated riff, and so people are, so that people can really focus on not only the lyrics, but the delivery and the tone of the delivery, like the impactfulness of it.
Absolutely. And the vocal should dance out on top of the track, especially a song like that, where, it's super heavy and super low tune, but Chino's still singing in his same, octave that he sings in.
Another one on this record.
I love that guitar sound.
Great guitar sound.
That's his SG straight into one of those green Mata amps.
Really?
Yeah. I've always loved that sound with the delay pedal on it. The bottom end
Beautiful.
from that guitar. So when he hits the low string.
The kick pattern on here because there's so much space in it.
So sparse.
Yeah. Okay, on Chino's voice, how do you keep his voice? There's so much mid-range information on it. Is that just the way his voice sounds?
It is.
Is it?
Yep.
Because
That's
he has such a unique tone.
He does, and it sounds. Mainly with him, I would use a 251 and my Martech DBX.
Yep.
And for some of the louder stuff, I would just switch to an SM7.
Okay.
And it was amazing how it just kind of sounded the same on both.
Right.
Like literally exactly the same. Like that's switching between those two mics right there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so and the vocal effects on there are kind of, they work perfectly with the guitar delays and things like that. Now, is that something that you print those reverbs that are
Always.
on there?
Yep.
Did you mix this or no?
I mixed this album,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, as you're tracking this, you're kind of mixing at the same time, right? You're getting.
I'm pre-mixing.
You're pre-mixing. You're putting these reverbs together because you can't separate them from the guitar effects and stuff. It creates the whole mood of the track.
Especially with the Deftones and like Alice in Chains. After we get the vocals recorded, then I'll usually sit with the song for however long it takes and start to get ideas and create these soundscapes. With Chino especially, with delays and reverbs and filtered vocals, and there's 5 or 6 different vocal scenes in every song. And, once I start to create one of those, it will kind of lead me to the next one. And then that one will lead me to the next one. And it's kind of a trail. And by the time I get done with it, these vocal scapes are part of the song now.
if you're in Pro Tools and you're working with things like this, do you use things like clip gain so that you can get the vocal where you don't even have to do rides?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Use
Yep.
clip gain. Okay, for people that
Absolutely.
don't know what clip gain is, it's you just go in on the individual section. You can ride the vocal up
Yeah.
and down without having to do a move.
It's like manual compressor.
Manual compressor, right? And so you can get the things there where the track kind of just plays itself, and there's no
moves that need to be made.
Yeah, moves meaning automation.
Yes. So, like for example, if I'm going to give this record to you to mix,
Yep.
I want you to be able to push all the faders up on your console and put them at 0, and you're going to hear the song like that pretty much.
You actually take the guesswork out of
Yeah.
where things are supposed to be, like
Yeah.
what the blends are supposed to be like.
Exactly.
Right.
And a part of that reason is too because a lot of artists want to create and they want to do it right then. They don't want to wait to hear what the mixer is going to do. You know, you create these scenes and this scenery, and it becomes part of the song.
Okay, so how important are rough mixes? I know that you mix your own records sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're using another mixer, most mixers I know really rely on a rough.
Yeah, you need to.
You need to,
just to
'cause
see where it is. If you haven't worked on it, you've never
Yeah.
heard the song.
Yeah.
You need to see where, hey, this is our vision of what we think this should be. Just make it sound better now. Make
Yeah.
it sound like a record. Clean it up.
Have you had things where you sent things to a mixer and it was where they didn't have a good rough and it was like, that's not.
I've had to mix stuff myself even when you sound a good rough.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes somebody just misses it for whatever the reasons are.
If there's
And I'm the same way.
okay, if there's a lot of time that happens between finishing the record and people go home with reference mixes, rough mixes, and then they just get used to those.
Oh, yeah. Then you're chasing the rough.
Yeah, is there anything worse than that?
No, that's kind of the worst.
Explain
That's
to people
kind of
what
the
chasing
worst.
the rough means.
So chasing the rough means somebody has spent a lot of time making a rough mix, which
Yep.
is great
Yep.
because the artist should hear,
and that's you making the rough mix.
should hear a good representation of what the song is.
Yes.
And sometimes you can turn that rough into a mix, even though it's not technically called a mix. You know, there's an energy and there's a vibe that happens when you're making roughs because you know it's not the mix.
That's
You
right.
don't care.
That's right.
I'll be laying down a rough and I'll ride all the drum fills to just ridiculous levels because I want to hear the fills.
Yeah.
You know, I'm notorious for making my roughs. Whatever the last thing I recorded, it is always super loud. Like if we're recording vocals and you hear the vocal rough, the vocals are so loud because it's a rough and it's
Yeah.
a work tape and I
Yes.
want to hear the vocals.
Yeah.
Drums, bass, guitar, we already had those roughs where those were really loud. You already got to hear yourself really loud. It's time
Right.
for this guy.
Yeah.
You know? So, but when you're doing that and you get to the mix, sometimes somebody else is doing the mix and they make it sound too much like a mix. It sounds too polished. It's not as, the energy's different because again, you're making this rough. You're not even thinking about it. You're thinking, shit, I got to get to the next song. Let's lay this down real quick. Because again, I don't like to I won't say waste, but burn up a lot of studio time making a rough.
And the band goes home with these roughs, and a lot of times they've listened to them 100
Yeah.
times, and then
love
they
it.
hear a mix, and they're like, "Well, it doesn't sound anything like it. I don't like it."
It's mainly the drums.
Yeah.
It's usually the drums because the drums are usually cranked on a rough and you're doing EQ and a compression that in the mix world is illegal and
Right.
you're doing it anyway. And you get that and you listen to it for 2 months and then you give it to somebody who replaces all your drums with samples and has their version of what your drums sound like. And that's when the trouble starts.
Yeah.
It can be tough. People get used to roughs and demos. Roughitis is the same thing as demoitis.
Well, yeah.
People make really, really good sounding demos. They spend a ton of time on it, and then they want to go in and redo it with their producer, and they're like, "This isn't the same." You're like, "I know it's not the same. You already have that version."
And is it your job as a producer to explain to the band, or are you in the same boat as they are?
Every situation's different.
Yeah.
Some bands don't spend any time on their demos. They know it's a demo, and they know all of it's going to get beat. I think a demo should just be a document of your ideas.
Do you ever find, though, that somebody does a demo and they capture one weird sound effect or something that you just can never, and then you're just like, we'll just use that?
All the time.
Yeah.
If the tempo's the same and it doesn't sound like crap,
Yeah.
I got no problem flying stuff in.
Yeah.
Because again, you've spent so much time on it on the demo situation with your guitar and your pedals or your plugins or your amps or whatever, and you sat in your bedroom or sat wherever all night and you got it exactly the way you want to hear it.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard for me to recreate that.
Right.
And not only is it going to be hard, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. If it can even be done.
If it can even be done. And, sometimes you can beat stuff and sometimes you just can't. And I have no problem admitting or saying whatever. You know what? You nailed it on that. Let's use that. Let's not waste 1 minute of time trying to redo it because that's perfect. And you just fucking import it into the session and it's done.
When you were assisting, going back to Sound City, how often would session drummers come in? Was that not really a thing back then?
It
with
was
the
a
bands?
thing. It was a thing, but
Yeah.
most of the sessions that I would work on were bands, and most of the bands had really good drummers already. There were a couple instances of Dr. Midnight having to come in late at night. You lock the doors and the drummer comes in the next.
Explain this.
The drummer comes in the next day and thinks he sounds amazing.
Right.
I've actually watched that happen.
Where a session drummer will come in at night and redo their drum part, play all the same fills and everything, but play them a lot better. And the drummer comes in the next day and they're like, I sound amazing on
Man,
this.
you guys must have been here all night working on my kit, man. It sounds awesome. And then everybody in the room's high-fiving, saying, yeah, dude, you sound fucking great. Let's do some guitar now. Let's do some bass. And you move on. And it's done. And you don't make a big deal about it.
And no one speaks of it again.
And no one speaks of it because it's not necessary.
I used to say to people, look in the credits and see if a session drummer was thanked in there. Because if they were thanked, they're playing on the record.
I mean, I've had to do that on records before.
Yeah.
I've had to, walk up to the drummer and just be like, bro, it's, God, you're giving it everything, but it's just still not what it needs to be.
Is that one of the worst things to do?
By far the hardest.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling to have to.
Do you dread going into the studio on a day? I'm sure it probably hasn't happened that. This used to be very common.
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Original drummers would get replaced by session drummers. Historically, this happened
Guitar
forever.
players, everybody.
Yeah.
Guitar players happened for years.
Yes, happened for years.
It's very hard. It's very hard to try to tell a guy that you're not good enough to play on your record. And
It sounds so cold.
It is. It's horrible.
But that's your job as the producer to make that call.
Somebody just gave me $1 million to make your band huge.
Yeah.
Nobody involved can stop that.
Yeah.
And if it's not happening because of whatever it is, then it is my job as the producer to make sure it happens. Whether you play it or I play it or he plays it or whatever plays it, but it's got to be great. And yes, that is the worst part I've ever had to deal with making an album. Luckily, I've only had to deal with that a couple times, but it was very, very, very hard.
So, Nick, what is something that you are looking forward to? You're talking about starting a label.
I'm starting a label. I'm looking forward to I'm still looking for that one album. I feel like I've made some really kick-ass records with some kick-ass bands, and I'm proud of all of it. I don't know. I still feel like I'm looking for that one thing, and am I ever going to find it? I don't know. I don't know what that is. I just still love music so much, that I just want to keep the energy, and I just want to keep recording good songs and hanging out with cool dudes, man. That's what we've been doing since the basement.
Absolutely.
That's literally it, and I'm still recording in basements and hanging out with my friends, and I've become friends with a lot of cool people in these bands, and it just so happens these bands are huge and cool. So what? Let's hang out and record some music, and that's all I'm looking for. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and just try to do good stuff that I like and that I think the fans are going to like, and that's a big part of this too. Making these records, being a fan of a lot of the bands that I've gotten to work with,
Yeah.
I know what I want to hear, and I got a pretty good idea what the rest of these fans want to hear. So it's really cool to be able to kind of guide.
Which I think that's what makes you a great producer, because you're being a fan of the band, you kind of know what you want to hear as a fan, what the fans want to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of times the bands don't even realize that, because they're not.
They don't.
They're in the bands. They're not really fans of their bands
No.
in a way, in a weird way.
They don't feel like they can repeat things that they've done.
Yeah.
Like with Korn or Rush, it's like, hey, you guys don't need to sound so different because you invented that.
Yeah.
That's your sound.
Right.
Those are your licks.
Yeah.
I want to hear them again.
Yes.
Do them, own them. They're yours.
Yeah.
So just staying true to that and making these records for fans. I love going to see the bands play live after we make these records, which is very rare because I'm usually in the studio with another band. But I just love being out in the crowd and watching people sing the words. I'm just like, yes, it worked. We did it. Because when it translates to the fans from the studio, and you're so in it when you're in the studio, you don't know. You like it. We love it. We think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But you got to play it for people and see if they like it. And I think when you can write a song that really connects and people are singing the words and they'll come see you play live, that's the code right there.
Nick, how do you know when a song's finished, when a mix is finished?
Usually when it gives me the chills. Usually when the hairs start to stand up on my arms, and I like to really get right up on the console, with the speakers right here and just turn it up as loud as possible, and you just get that feeling that everything is just firing. It's all just firing on the right things. And and mixing is so subjective.
It is.
Is a mix really ever done?
Not till it comes out.
I listen to records I mixed years ago. I wish I could remix so bad now, but it's like, what? People love it the way it is. It must be all right,
Okay, and Nick, what is a perfect song?
Perfect song.
Yeah.
Jeez. Like an actual song?
Actual song, yeah. Classic song that is a perfect song.
Round and Round by Rat.
Love Round and Round. Yes.
To me, that's the perfect pop rock song. Poppy rock song. It's got guitar solos. The vocals sound cool. It's cool drums in it. That's my Desert Island song.
I always wish Warren DeMartini's solos in that era were a little bit louder, though.
Yeah.
He's such a good player.
So great. Yeah. Out of the Cellar by Rat. That's my Desert Island band, too. That's my record.
Awesome. So one last thing here, Nick. When you're mixing drums, drummer perspective or audience perspective?
Drummers.
Okay.
Drummers. I want to air drum. I want everything to be where I'm air drumming. I hate it when the hi-hat's over there. I'm not left-handed.
I knew this was the unless it's a left-handed drummer.
Yes.
Do you ever record left-handed drummers? And is it weird if you do? Have you ever recorded a left-handed drummer?
I think once. Maybe. And I could be misremembering, but no, I don't think so. There's not many lefties that come through. No.
Not many Phil Collins out there.
No.
Nick, it's been a pleasure hanging with you.
It's been fun.
And really appreciate you. I love everything you do, man, and thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I'm just, just a fan of music.
Awesome.